Welcome back to the Seriously Don't Do That podcast. I'm your host, Dan Griffith, president of Grow with Dan. And tonight we're going to be talking about part 2 of our series, Don't Overlook Your Website. In part 1, we talked a little bit about the general idea around what you need to do with your website. And tonight we're going to get a little deeper into that and talk more about things like customer journey. Well, good evening, David.
Good evening. So like you mentioned last time we talked about the why.
Good evening. So like you mentioned last time we talked about the why and what.
Yes, so
explain
I think
the how.
how we use something oftentimes informs a lot of the tactics of the way we set it up. And I think that's true with your website. I like the strategy of driving to and through your website. So really using all of your marketing to push people to the website. Because in today's world, it's very common for people to gather their information and sometimes even purchase, depending on what your product is, there on the website. It's also very important to align with what I like to call your customer's journey, meaning that a customer, or when they first start, a prospect, is going to go through a journey as they go from basically being aware of a potential problem, pain, challenge, to the point where they actually buy something.
That journey sounds complex.
Yeah, and I think
Can you
I'll
explain
explain
that?
it from my perspective, but I'm certainly not, the way I look at it is not exclusive or the only right way. I mean, depending on what your product is, it could differ greatly. I'm realizing that I've spent a majority of my career in more enterprise sales, enterprise software sales specifically. It's going to be a little different than somebody that's maybe selling a product or maybe even selling a inexpensive SaaS type solution to consumers. But a persona goes through a definite cycle when they buy something, just like you do. First would be awareness, and that just comes with general knowledge about a need that they have to, meet, or a pain to try to solve, or a problem to overcome. The second thing is, after awareness, is saying, okay, I'm aware that there's something there, is interest, meaning that, okay, I now know a little bit more about this need. I've defined it a little bit more, and I'm really starting to think about how I can solve it, which is when you move to the consideration stage, meaning that your persona is now starting to look at potential solutions to meet their pain or solve their problem. And then evaluation. They've decided on your solution. Now they want to evaluate it against maybe a preset of criteria, or evaluate it against something that the industry has provided. And then there's procurement, meaning the persona has made an intellectual decision. I like to say they're sold, but now they need to make a financial investment, which is actually the money exchanging hands and buying. And then last, but certainly not least, is retention and upsell, meaning that we want to retain them as a customer, and then we also want to sell them more of whatever we have. And your role there is justifying continual and additional investment.
So can you give me an example of what type of stuff you need on your website to align
and again, it's going
to
to
the
be
steps of
it's
a
going to
customer's
differ
journey?
based on your product. David, this was something I spent a lot of time just thinking about to try to be general in, because for each company it's going to different, but I'm going to take a whack at it. I would encourage those of you that want more information on that, feel free to reach out to me. Be glad to have a conversation with you. But under awareness, you want to pick a topic that's germane to the problem, pain, or challenge you solve. I've seen this, and I've set this up sometimes as a separate, what I would call neutral site, that has a lot of information on either an industry or a pain or a problem. And it allows people to opt in to learn more. So that's awareness. The second is interest. Content with something like 5 things everybody needs to know about X. Consideration, content that says something like, how can my company solve your X challenge, your X pain? Evaluation, certainly, short demos here, short videos with competitive differentiators, sometimes trials, sometimes webinars that do that. In procurement, ROI documents, so return on investment, how can you pay for this and prove out your investment? And then finally, retention and upsell, case studies on how customers are using and expanding. I know that a lot of people are going to be surprised to hear about case studies at that point, because most of the time case studies are used in awareness. My contention is that case studies really help reinforce, and they help people to understand maybe potentially new use cases. So, David, a lot of content in these 2 series on Don't Overlook Your Website. There's probably a lot more. That's why I provide my information down in the comments, and certainly you can reach out to me if you have specific questions. Maybe what we'll do on an upcoming episode is answer questions that come in from our audience. But until then, I want to encourage our audience to be well and grow. This week, we're going to have a bonus episode of the Seriously Don't Do That podcast. David has put together a lot of fun outtakes from our season, and I'll cover a bonus topic that'll be of especial interest to founders.